started darkloopsproductions, Surviving the Last of Us. I'm Dr. Scott Jordan, aka Zombie Scotty, cognitive psychologist, philosopher at Illinois State University.
And I'm Dr. Leandra Parris, Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion for the School of Ed at William & Mary.
And today we've come together to discuss episodes 7 and 8. Episode 7, Left Behind. Episode 8, When We Are in Need. And we'll just collectively refer to these as the Elli-sodes. Joining us in the conversation today, the hardest working man in comics, Mr. Victor Dandridge Jr. Victor, please tell everyone a little something about who you are.
Of course, I'm Victor Dandridge. I'm, as Scott lovingly said, the hardest working man in comics, self-publishing comic creator from Columbus, Ohio, through my imprint Vantage in-house productions, phenomenological narratologist through the You Create Comics line, which teaches kids of all ages, even the kid in you, how to make comics and tell wonderful stories therein.
Fantastic. Also joining us in our discussion of these Elli-sodes, the one, the only, the philosopher supreme, Dr. Tom Buller. Tom,
Hello.
Please tell everybody a little something about who you are and what you do.
Hello, I'm Tom Buller, Professor of Philosophy, Illinois State University. Play the drums, support Man United.
The shots fired.
We won't talk about Liverpool, Bournemouth today. So what we do in this series is we just basically pick favorite line, favorite character, favorite scene. Since we're doing 2 episodes at the same time, I'm not going to demand we do 2 different, since they are about Elli. I'll just open the floor for favorite line, favorite scene, favorite character from either of the episodes.
Ooh. You know what? I'm going to go for a very interesting character, the headmaster, the captain that Elli had to sit in front of, and who was basically giving her the game of how to survive in this post-apocalyptic world. This is a person that he has managed. I mean, it's been 25 years since everything has gone down, and he's got the lay of the land, and he's trying to find who would be the next leaders to kind of set the stage for how humanity works. And I think this is really interesting because it's kind of the proposition that's presented to Elli twice, once in this episode of the mall, and then in the next episode, where these are people that are recognizing there's something about Elli that actually has a leadership capacity. And it's just her raw demeanor that is the thing that would keep her from finding a successful path in this post-apocalyptic life.
Yeah, I love that because, because we think Elli is special because she's immune, right? But it's not just that she's immune. Like, she is actually a pretty, I wanted to say kick-ass. Can we cuss on?
You can say kick-ass. That's pretty harmless.
She's a fighter, like her attitude, like, yeah, I mean, she's a teenager, she's 14, like, right, like her and Riley going off in the mall, like every future leader is a 14-year-old sneaking off to go do something they probably shouldn't be doing, right?
Absolutely.
So I love that you honed in on the fact that, like, her immunity is almost secondary to what makes her so special in this world,
right?
And I love that they made her this strong independent character, particularly for the show, because she wasn't quite, I mean, she does get there in the video game, but she's a little bit less, I don't know how to put
less gritty. Yeah. She's a little soft cookie dough in the game, from what I understand. I literally just downloaded it, so I'm going to be playing that over the next couple of weeks.
You're going to get stuck in a basement.
I mean, it's what happens.
Are you still not out of the basement, Scott?
I haven't tried, man. I've got too many things going on. I'll get out someday, I swear.
I believe in you, Scott. I believe in you.
But this notion of immunity is interesting, to throw a spanner in the works here. So immunity plays this key role, but just as Victor said, the appeal there was from somebody who's learned to work the system to survive, to embrace the order and the structure, and to be a leader, and in that sense complicit. And I wonder whether, one narrative is that she's not immune, and she's not immune to that complicity. And we're going to see that she will get to see that order is the only way to survive, as many have done previously.
Well, that's one of the things I've loved about this show. There's these two characters that we're following are not engaging in world building, right? They're not sitting in a space. They're not trying to make the world a better place. They're going from one place to the next to maybe try to make the world a better place. So that question hasn't really, been asked of her yet. In other words, where she is and where she's sitting. And it will be fascinating if that context arises, where she has to make choices like that.
Try not to spoil where we know things go due to the finale and things like that. I think what's really interesting, or the question mark space that we have not actually seen yet, is what inspires Elli to actively take on that role a bit by knowingly being the source for the potential cure. By the time we get to episode 7 and 8, we know that she's on this journey with the intent to be some source of the cure. But when she's first given this, I don't want to call it an ultimatum, but a potential choice of stepping into role, they didn't know that there was a potential immunity within her. She had never been bitten. None of that had ever happened before. So at what point did she kind of apply this sense of, this is what everyone, bestows upon me, and I have this other immunity piece, which now supersedes almost the level of my own personal stakes. And she kind of puts herself in a position of a leadership role by submitting to this idea that she could, in fact, be carrying the cure. That seems to be something that, as I've seen in terms of story, hasn't fully been shown as to how she has that switch over to go from someone who is so very solely personally motivated as a young lady, but then suddenly starts having this big idea of the rest of the world and how she can affect it. And I think there's some sort of correlation between those things, even though we haven't seen it yet.
I tell you what, you guys, you keep making me think of Kill Bill 2 and Gaia myths, right? Because we know Elli's a killer. And we know that she's a threshold character, right? She's not going to just be in a group. She's going to manage her own risks. We see that with all throughout the show, to be honest. It's what I'll call the smartassery, right? That's just her managing the border. I'm not going to be what you want. And it's not even conscious. It's just who she is. So she does, in a sense, back to Tom's comment about immunity, she is, to some extent, personality-wise, immune to conformity, in the sense of it's not who she is. And it's just that kind of smartassery fringe character that will deal with the tensions you're mentioning, right? She will go across the country with this dude she just met. And I mean, they're saying something about personality, right? With her being the potential savior. At the same time, Guy is a killer and the creator. And Elli's not had a kid. That's not the point. She has a possibility to create a future for humanity. And we're not going to talk about the finale, but I love the conversations they had in this finale. We'll talk about that at another time, because it got me thinking about some other stuff. But
of course.
Yeah. And I am wondering, like, how much of that conversation you brought up, Victor, goes through her mind as she's sitting with Riley and thinking through, I mean, they're just being kids. And it's almost like, I feel like this is her turning point in some ways, because they're just being children. They're falling in love. And then it kind of all gets taken away. And I think there's a bit of a break that happens there that I think kind of pushes her towards, because she's been in this camp this whole time. Like, she's like, she's being bullied and like stuff like that, but like she hasn't really had to face that level of loss yet. And so I would say it starts there, to answer my own thoughts in terms of
I totally agree with that.
Thus far in the series.
Yeah, especially because this is the first time where she's had a legitimate pushback to the life that she knows, and even the life that was pitched to her. This was an opportunity to grow within the federal ranks and become, this upstanding citizen. And here, Riley, her best friend, if not more, comes back and goes, hey, there's this other side that we've never really been told the truth about. And here, and the context of two people that have intrinsic innate love for one another, being confronted by the idiosyncrasies of their different ideals. You know, it's easy to look at Fireflies as terrorists. It's easy to look at Fedra as this oppressive force. So when they're both confronted with those ideas and going, okay, well, where exactly do we fit within this? Where do we want to fit? This is up to us. And that's not, I think that was the biggest turning point for Ellie, because Riley gave her that option that says, you were given this thing, but did you know that there was this other side that you could actually go into as well? They're telling you how to conform within their system, but what if you left their system? Now there's a whole nother system for you to consider, and now you have a bigger picture of what you could possibly be.
Yeah.
And love is right in the middle of that, right? And as we experienced adults know, love is a mess. Right. And you can be in love with people that you disagree about almost everything on. Right. And the reason it's called love is because you can't help yourself. You can choose to be with them or not, but you can't choose if you're attracted to them. You can't choose those kind of things. So that is one thing they have done just so well in this show, is just let everything be a mess. Right. And I'm going to not, you guys can bring it back to Ellie. One of the things, I just love the character Joel. I love that he's a killer. I love that he looks simple. And when I think about, I'm doing the Kill Bill 2 thing, because I think it's one of the best Gaia myth movies ever. At the same time, in Kill Bill 2, Gaia didn't have a male ally.
Right.
There was no male who was killing for Gaia, like in Kill Bill 2, like there is in here. So Joel is performing his proper role as a drone, making sure that Mother Earth gets to where she needs to be in order to make things happen. And we just don't see that role, right? We've seen movies like The Protector and stuff like that, or whatever that movie was. But no, I love what they're doing with Joel.
I'm losing patience with him.
That's not fair.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Not to anticipate too much what's going to happen, but I think he's becoming less plausible as a character.
In what way?
Well, you see, you started off, and in that episode, the one where they're at the resort and the creepy cannibal guy, and we see what he's capable of, and we know what he's capable of, but then increasingly we're asked to balance this with this paternal affection for Ellie. And I think that's a difficult psychological space.
You and I have talked about this.
I was gonna say, I gotta ask a real question, Tom, if you don't mind me asking. Do you have children?
Yes, I do. 91.
I love it. Because I as a dad, I totally understand exactly what you mean by this weird sort of space and place where Joel is this killer, but he's also this very super paternal individual. But Ellie, as we've seen so far, is not his daughter. So for him to be so paternal towards her is something a little strange. It is definitely strange because he doesn't actually have, at this point in the series, any real reason that he should be like, yes, I'm going to do this, other than obligation to Tess. But that's more obligation than the paternal nature that he seemingly weaves in and out of, that you're kind of like, well, why are you doing this? Like, you know, until especially like at this point, he's barely told about Sarah. You know, he hasn't really gotten into his own daughter and how Ellie fits into any sort of dynamic that would represent what his daughter was like.
I mean, sorry, Leanne.
Oh no, Tom, you can keep going. I was just gonna say,
she's reeling you in, man.
I'm waiting.
Leanne, you do look like the cat just waiting. Like, I got you. You.
I'm muting myself to hear Leandra.
Oh no, okay, so I feel like when two people are going through the world that they're going through, like they both are starting to give each other what they need to survive. And one of the things about Joel is that he turned off a part of himself when he lost his daughter, who's made him this ruthless, no nonsense, non-attached individual. And she is giving him something that brings him back to who he was before. That's just so tempting. You can't pass that up. You can't, like, the idea of being a father again, I think would just be both healing and also wrong at the same time. And I think that he's grappling with the betrayal of what that would mean for Sarah, along with just how good it probably feels to be in that role again. And I think that he's giving her something she's never had, which is a constant adult figure. She's never had a parent. So I think whenever we're put in these traumatic situations, first of all, social support's the number one way we get through those things. So they're only there. They're the only two people together who haven't died yet. So I am not surprised that they're transferring on each other like that. And I think it's actually quite natural that they would have those boundaries blurred. I find it interesting that when those boundaries get blurred, Joel becomes more annoying.
Because he's not so hardcore, he's not so ruthless, no cut and dry.
And he's getting into those daddy puns.
I gotta admit, when he says baby girl, I was like,
yeah.
Right?
No, that got
Tom
me.
is like, no,
that got me.
No,
well, okay. Tom,
Go
on
ahead.
that one, could I convince you that it wasn't just the nature of them just being together, it was the fact that she saved him. Whereas that was a pivotal thing where he actually told her to leave and save herself, get out, go away. And the fact that she came back and dedicated herself, potentially putting herself at risk for him, opened him up to that expression to be able to do so. Like, that's how she earned it for him, was you actively saved me, looked out for me.
Yeah.
Whereas you could have gone on about your life and didn't.
So it's possible to be a cold-blooded, torturing killer and then to feel warm and fuzzy that somebody saved you.
I think that goes back to what Scott was saying about Kill Bill. That was Bill. Bill is this cold-blooded killer, but the moment he thought that Beatrix was dead, he was devastated, absolutely devastated, because he did in fact love her.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, people that are in love are going to be the ones who do the most torturing.
It's messy.
Because they're taking care of theirs. When you get the situation as raw as this show is, and the stakes are so high and so clear, it's just, stakes don't even have to be clear. Kin doesn't even have to die. Kin can be traumatized, and you will rage on those who traumatize them, and you will carry that rage with you for years, and it will become increasingly abstract, and suddenly you don't know why you're mad all the time, right? And so I think they've done a masterful job. Of course, one of the things that it is hard about the show is that there are large tracts of time that pass between episodes, right? So we've got to fill some of their relationship development in for them, right? Because they're just showing us, month by month or whatever. But it makes perfect sense to me that, as you said, Victor, she saved him as Gaia saves all people. Right. But she saved him by killing. I mean, this is what I love about this show. It's not this super moralistic, abstract structure. It's in the world. It's about the world. It's not about abstract whatever. And the killers are also the lovers. And those extremes can easily, I'd almost bet there's some kind of proportional relationship. The more you love your crew, the more you're willing to kill and torture for them.
Oh, yeah. And Tom, I have a question for you, just bringing you back. Are you annoyed by him because he's getting soft, or are you annoyed by him because you feel like he's making decisions that are contrary to who he is because of it? Like, I almost feel like they're kind of like balancing each other, where she's becoming harder and he's becoming softer.
Oh, yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I don't know the show, and having watched Scott try to play the game and never managed to get out of one room, I have no desire to play the game.
Man, what happens in the living room stays in the living room. Man. Come on.
So I don't know what happens, and not to foreshadow, but I would have her get rid of him.
Okay, so Tom, why should she let Joel go?
Well, I mean, I think he's just becoming slightly pathetic, and
No respect.
her character is developing. I think she's wiser. She sees that he's an emotional impediment. She knows, I think she's brilliantly drawn and brilliantly acted and knows what needs to be done. And I think he's going to put their safety in jeopardy.
So, man, why are you so intolerant of emotional diversity, right? I mean, some people are emotionally open, some people aren't. If Joel were an emotionally open, I love everybody, he wouldn't have killed all those people and she wouldn't have survived. In other words,
that's my point of this psychological narrowness. But I mean, to quote you, we need to respect killers, and that's what she is, and that's where she will become. I mean, he's weak and frail.
Oh, God.
I mean, well, okay.
She does survive without him, though. Like, he comes in after she's already killed everybody. So does she need him at this point?
Yeah,
at the beginning, she did.
Exactly. Yeah. And in a real big way, specifically in these 2 episodes, he is the liability. Yeah. And him being wounded, she's putting herself in danger to keep him safe. So the roles are flipped in such a way that it almost becomes lopsided and can never be balanced again, because Joel it's not even like his age is catching up to him or his emotions are catching up to him. It's just that Ellie has now almost superseded him in her ability to survive than his ability to survive.
Well, yeah.
We already saw him. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, and she's seen what he did in Game of Thrones, and he got killed and she survived. So
I mean, I think technically she got eaten by a troll. But
she went out like a soldier, though. I mean,
yeah, she did. Although I do think it's interesting because you're bringing up this point about how, like, now she's a better killer and like she's surpassed him. But is that not the point of a father?
Snap.
In many ways, but that's the thing, right? Like, a father has to know at a certain point, I have to let you go. And in that sense, I think that's what Tom is talking about. Joel should be at a point where he goes, you got to go do what you're going to go do.
So what Ellie could say to Joel is, I have other things I have to do. You're right. Well, in the finale, we're skipping to finale stuff, but see, the thing is, she did become who she is because of him. So, like, can't there be a killer retirement program or something? In other words,
no, killers don't retire. Killers don't retire, Scott. Now that's hopeful. That's hopeful.
Well, then what she'll do? Well, but he can't. Well, maybe he's Shane, right? Maybe he just rides off because he's a killer. Maybe he's Logan, right? And there is no rest. That I'll abide, right? That I will abide. But the idea that somehow his character is weak and frail is I think an assessment that looks at a certain point of time and doesn't address that she got where she is because of that. So one could say he's frail at the moment, but like she was frail from the front without him. So I like the dependency. And if she's an honest Gaia, she's going to understand her own dependency, and we'll see, how it plays out. I would have no problem with her leaving him behind, but it wouldn't be out of spite. She'd never say you're weak, and she'd find a way that Joel was taking care of himself, or at least have him say, no, you think she's just going to run off, huh? Well, then she's not my Gaia.
I think she's going to get rid of him. But can we pivot to the very creepy guy who headed up that resort?
Oh,
go ahead, Tom.
Is
that your favorite character? Is that your favorite
teacher?
He was brilliant because he reminded me of the teachers I had at school in England.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that awful, clever ways of manipulating and not using violence straightforward, and the way he tried to entice her to his side, and the compliments that became increasingly more sordid. And I thought he was by far the creepiest thing in the show, including the mushroom people.
I agree.
No, they don't lie to you. Mushroom
Right.
people don't lie. Right?
They just click a lot. Just
That's right.
And they just want you to join them. Like we
Right.
saw with Tess, like if you're not violent
Yes.
towards them, they will lovingly bring you into the fold. So like,
So
okay, so
go ahead. Go ahead.
this
I'm
whole
coming
character,
back to
I'm one of those
mushroom.
people where I'm always like, oh, just please meet at least one good person, right? Like, please show me that humanity is not. However, I do think he had a really great point. David had a great point where he's like, I've always had a violent heart, and the apocalypse, I work. Joel has a violent heart. He works.
Mhm.
David, the apocalypse gives him the chance to be his best self. Victor, going back to that conversation,
Right.
before,
That's exactly what it did.
like he gets to be the and it is okay. First of all, I also have to say having Troy, who is the original actor for Joel in the video game, play the second in command. I forget his name, Keith or something.
Mhm.
Loved it. Absolutely loved that entire thing. I love that they're letting them be part of it because this is a very like tight-knit community that we all follow the actors and all that. But I agree, like brilliantly acted. If I hadn't played the video game, I would, and I hadn't seen anything else from the resort when they first see each other over the deer, I would have been like, okay, like maybe this is actually like a good person. Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
You
love
knew
what
there
you're
was something, the way that he responded to the little girl that lost her dad.
Yep.
You knew that there was already this inkling of you're a terrible, terrible person. Okay. Like underneath it all, you might be using the good book to sway these people, manipulate, run, rule these people. You're not a good guy. Okay. Like with let's get that set. You are a survivor, right? Like, I mean, he's Negan level with the way that he has brought people together and done what they need to do in order to make it. Sure, you are necessary, but you aren't good. And I think that's the one thing that I will, and it's so, I mean, it could be a conditioning of the patriarchy that obviously I live within. I wanted Joel to meet him. I wanted it to be Joel that interacted with him and ended that situation, because it would have been a father to father sort of scenario. And the fact that we didn't get that, I have to deal with on a level of what I personally wanted, because there was, there's father to father, there's father to husbandness that kind of was played out here, right? Because you could be by my side, little girl, and you're like, ew, stop it, like big white van, no windows, energy. I wanted Joel to be the one who solved that for Ellie. And I think that was the thing that was the most challenging, was it had to be Ellie in order for her to become what she needs to become. But it's just what I wanted in order to protect her from that. So like, as a caring parent, I'm like, no, like you don't get your hands dirty, daddy does. And that wasn't given to us. And that, I think, was a truly prolific storytelling beat for them to, because I mean, everybody, like, we know Joel is coming, and they're like, oh, he's gonna walk in on him right then, and it's gonna be on, and we're gonna see Joel him, and it's gonna be amazing. No, Ellie did it. And now you're like, this is a very different space. This is not what we thought, and she's gonna be different. Joel's gonna be different. Like, if she explains to Joel what just happened, how will Joel take that? Like, I wasn't there. I didn't have you, like, you had to save me, and then this happened to you. Oh, like, I can see that kind of wrecking Joel and his characterization moving forward for a bit.
I do think he'll do, because there is that moment where he was like, you shouldn't have to do that, right? In an earlier episode.
Right.
And I think some of it is like, it's really hard, right? So like, Victor, like, you're a dad, right? So you're coming at it from like, and like, I think
Girl
about
dad
my
at that,
dad.
so definitely have that. Yeah,
and I think about my dad, where like, what I loved about my relationship with my father was that he gave me what I needed and let me go out into the world. And when I messed up, he was there to support me, but like, he didn't save my ass like I did. And so for me, I actually had the opposite reaction, where I was like, yes, it has to be Ellie. Ellie has to take back the power. She's got to show that she can be independent. And he just needs to come in at the end and support her emotionally. And so I think a lot of how we interpret the idea of fatherhood is, one, we're socialized, right? Like,
Right.
I'm a white woman. That's like a completely different relationship with my father than what you have as a dad. And so I think it's an interesting way to have the same image on the screen and both of us walk away with two different feelings.
Oh yeah.
And I love that about this story, because that's the whole point, is love is messy. Like, your love is expressed like that. I experienced love my way, and we both got to see it in the same scene. And I think it's great. I just think it's so great.
But why isn't she disappointed in him?
She knows. I mean, dude got stabbed with a bat. Like,
wait. Disappointed in whom?
Well, I mean, I suppose this is the flip side or the corollary of what Victor and Leandra are saying. So, I mean, since the way Leandra phrased it, if you're the daughter or quasi-daughter or whatever you want, and then you're waiting for your dad to come and rescue you, and she's forced to commit these brutal acts that freak her out on that last scene when she's almost wild, wouldn't one response be, where were you?
No, not at all.
Because she wasn't waiting on him to come rescue her. I don't think she was waiting on him.
That phase transition that she went through when she was hacking that guy 50 times, that reorganization of Elli, that deconstruction of Elli, that was a Gaia transition. That was her becoming her. That was not a moment of failure of him or failure of her. That's the shit that had to be done at that moment, because this is the worst kind of man that could ever exist. This was the worst kind of man that could ever exist. And she, I mean, for me, this is all metaphor. And she made it clear, this kind of person shall not persist. And so I don't think she leaves that feeling disappointed. I don't think she leaves it judgy. I think it's part of who she is.
I respect all of that, but I think Tom actually has a point with the sense of dualities that we're seeing here. It wouldn't have been inappropriate if Elli responded with that, even at least initially. Like, if she was like, and the reason why I say this, and I don't know, Tom, if this is how you're getting to that conclusion, but when she comes out, the fact that Joel is there means that he could have been there to help her and wasn't. And that reaction, I think, would have been authentic, especially as she's coming from this high point of, I had to do this, and you've already said that you didn't think that I should ever have to do this because you're here to protect me, and I had to do this. Like, this is worse than what I did before.
Exactly.
Because you weren't here. I think that's a very interesting storytelling angle. Even if she doesn't hold it forever, or even very long, it would have been very interesting and not inauthentic if she had that towards him in that moment, because, you know, this guy was basically the antithesis of Joel. And would it be wrong for her to have the same assumption that I had, that even though she couldn't have been aware beforehand, and that doesn't stop us from, you know, the logic train at all, of knowing that Joel was down and out, she couldn't know that he was out there on his way. But the moment he shows up right after it happens, then she'd be like, where were you? You didn't see the fire? I set a fire. Like, what were you waiting for? Like, I could see that kind of in that emotional confusion. Because again, in that sense of, like you said, she determined that, you know, preacher touchy dad is not to, he cannot, he will not, and shall not. The motions of getting to that space, we could have seen a little bit extra of how she finally cements that ideal for herself, even though she did it. Because there's a lot of times we do something and we haven't quite, you know, made it concrete as to why we did that. And I think having that interaction with Joel and being upset, like, you weren't there, and now I'm a killer. Like, now I am a killer, and it's kind of your fault because you weren't there. And now you get a totally different. I think it's an interesting.
I don't agree with that.
It's an interesting idea. It's
interesting, and she was in a disorganized space after that. I'm sure that thought would have run through, but it's running through a different Elli. It's running through as she's been christened in blood, and she's not who she was when she showed up at that camp. And so, yes, maybe Joel Maybe there could be a Joel, where were you? There could also be a damn Joel, I get you. Right. All of that could be going through who she is. So I don't deny that that's a possible thought she had. I just don't.
And just to needle Tom just a little bit, just to needle Tom, because it's only fair that I give you some back. I'm sorry, Tom, I love you. But it would have been also just as interesting if she was truly caked in blood and Joel goes, "What did you do?"
Yeah.
With almost a sense of question mark judgment. What did you do? Like, I'm a killer, but look at you. Like, what did you do?
After he just tortured 2 people and shot them.
Listen, that whole kneecap pop off, I was like,
yeah, I don't think these things are like mutually exclusive. Like, I think that human beings are complicated enough that everything we're saying can be 100% true all at the same time.
Yes.
And I'm going to let you answer that question, Tom, because I'm really interested. Like, like, what if he had been like, what did you do? Like, what if he had judged her?
Well, I mean, I would have loved that. I mean, I think this plays into her kind of transition as the leader, and I mean, I think that would have been great. If she'd gone completely kind of postal, and but I don't. Another thing to reel back to, I like the Mall episode and the symmetry with that amazing, what was it, the 3rd episode with the 2 gay guys.
Yes.
And that this kind of these bookends. I thought that was beautifully done, and just the whole. I think it's very brave to have the whole show basically these 2 teenage girls and this sweet story, and it was wonderfully played. And I thought the ending was a little bit predictable, really.
Of the mall scene?
Yeah. I mean, I was a bit disappointed in that, and because they were so well played, those 2 together. And
I wish we could have seen more of them. And I think it would have been, well, no, I won't say that yet. Lots of finale comments.
I got it.
You're left at the end of this episode wondering like what happened to Riley, right?
Yeah.
I think I was actually going to say this is my favorite scene out of both episodes, is the scene where they're dancing and then she says stay. And it's like you can tell that's what's right. I think that's why Riley went and got her. Like, she just wants someone to tell her to stay. She doesn't want to go. And like, that is such a pure, innocent first love thing to be like, okay. Right. And I just love that there's that immediate acceptance. They went through all that storming and norming where they like rushed, everything. And I just love that pure moment of like, screw it. I want you to stay. And all right, I'm going to do it. And now we're giddy and we're kind of awkward and we're kissing and we're, I just miss that. Like first love moments. And so we see old love in episode 3, not old love, but you know what I mean? Like long-term love.
Yeah.
So I love that dichotomy. And then to have it's not that we're not allowed to have good things, but we are in an apocalypse. And like, if you let your guard down. And so what message that sends to Elli, that the minute you let your guard down, the minute that you're vulnerable, the minute that you have this, you're going to lose it. And I think that sets up some of where Elli is at too, that you don't know, technically don't know yet. And so that whole scene, that whole episode, I did not enjoy playing it as a downloadable content. It's a DLC. So like, it's not actually part of the main game. That was not as fun, but seeing it play out on the big screen was everything.
Yeah.
From a storytelling standpoint, you kind of knew Riley was going to get bit at some point.
Yeah.
You knew that was going to be the case. I think the thing that made this so special was that they both got bit. And without the previous knowledge that we already had as the audience coming in, that sense of irony, knowing that Elli is immune, there was a finality to them in that moment that they were ready to handle together. That again, I think juxtaposes Frank and Bill, like you said in that 3rd episode, where they're both drinking this poisoned wine, and they're doing so willingly. And here, this young love that says, "Okay, well then, we're gonna ride this out until we both lose our minds, and we're gonna be together. Like, that's bottom line, we're going to be together. And the real tragedy of this one, this is almost like I've told people this for years. The William Shakespeare Romeo and Juliet that was directed by Baz Luhrmann in the 90s is actually more tragic than the original play, because in the original play, Romeo drinks the poison, he dies, Juliet wakes up, right? And it's like, oh, wait, you're dead. Oh, that sucks. In that movie, as he's drinking the poison, Juliet wakes up and touches his cheek, and they see each other for a moment, where there's a moment where that did not have to be. And that's the part that makes this that much more tragic, because while they're both bitten, we know Ellie's going to survive this and she's not. And that just makes it that much more gut-wrenching as a viewer, because you're like, they had dedicated themselves, even in death, they were going to love each other to the end, but we know she's not going to die. Damn it. That just...
You know, that's what I think they've really done a good job of that sort of thing throughout this whole show.
Yeah.
Because very rarely are the words that are coming out of people's mouth true indicators of what's going on in their world. Mm-hmm. And they're just managing themselves with the people that they're in. And for me, that's what words are, right? So I like the fact that we know what's going on. We know they're falling in love. We know the dance that they're going through. And we know, I'd say more so than any other episode, this is the one that really, honestly, is beautiful and felt like a show, in the sense that you knew that was going to happen, right? Or something like that was going to happen. Nonetheless, it's like comedy. It's not about if you know what's coming. It's about the delivery. It's about the timing. It's about the acting. And watching these two young ladies fall in love was just incredibly well done. And they just do that. And then, Leandra, your comment about, just stay. That's the moment of maximum vulnerability. You guys have heard me talk about maximum exclusivity requires maximum vulnerability. And that's the moment where someone's cards are completely laid on the table. And nothing they had to get there. They had to go through this whole dance before, whoosh, that wall came down. Don't leave. We've all been through stuff like that. Telling someone we love them for the first time. Right, we've all been through that. Maybe not the while, but we've been through.
But then this prompts another question. So we've had several over the course of the series, and in this one with Riley and Ellie, where somebody's faced with the decision to shoot somebody that's infected. Why is that so difficult?
What do you mean difficult?
That's a good one.
Well, I mean, given the horror, I mean, not to make it too desperately sad, but imagine that your loved one, end stage cancer or profound dementia. I mean, why, when Ellie says, oh, she's killed before, making a kind of moral equivalence between what she did in the nasty resort and with Riley, but they're so fundamentally different acts. I mean, one of them, you could arguably be, she did exactly the right thing.
Right. I think that there's a sentiment that in the aftermath of this whole thing, this entire societal collapse, holding on to people is that much more important than it's ever been. And if you juxtapose all the times that it's been difficult for someone to actively pull the trigger versus when we saw in the first episode, the professor in India that's like, bomb the cities, I'm going home. I'm going home to be with my family, bomb the cities. And that includes where she's at. She's like, kill us right now. Like, we have to. Like, that's the only way we're going to stop this. Bomb us right now. There was almost less of a reluctancy from her than there is at this point now, where they've lost so many people, and that becomes the problem. They know they're gonna lose you, but it's still that much harder because there's been so much loss in the last 25 years. That would be my only explanation, is that everyone that's dealing with the idea of loss and the way that you can lose someone, it's that much harder to pull the trigger because you just don't want to do it.
Right.
And they're still kind of there. I you know what I mean? Like, they're, and Sam asked the question, do you think they're still in there?
Right.
And like, I know the answer is no, right? But I do think and this is the one thing Walking Dead did really well, the
Yes.
whole season where you find out they had been keeping people because what if, right? Like, what
Well.
if I could bring them back? Or like when you have the cordyceps, there's not quite the same level of finality as actually shooting them and putting them down. And so I think I try to think about, like, could I do that if it were my child, if it were my loved one? And I genuinely don't know that I could be the one.
Right.
I would understand that someone else needs to go do it. I don't know that I could be the one to do it. Because there's always a little bit of hope, I think. Or it's just fucking hard. Like, look at someone that you love no matter what. I love you even if you have fungal growth coming out of your head.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I love you even if it's not you. So,
and I would kiss you, but uck.
right? I don't know. Some people might get into that. I don't know. Like, I'm not down in anyone's kink, but like, it's just,
and there's so much more to decide with that trigger pull than that person.
Right.
And there's so much diversity in human being that some people just can't, and some people can. And then there's people in the middle that can be persuaded to with a group around. I mean, it's everywhere. And so I often say we don't study violence enough, and we don't study sex enough, because we become different creatures in those moments. And when people say, what would you do? I've not been in that state. I do not know. I'll find out if it ever happens. Right. And I love how this show just gives us a diversity of answers. And I'm going to cheat real quick, because Leandra asked Tom a question earlier, and started by Victor, of what would Ellie have done if Joel had said, what did you do? Because Joel probably would have said that, but that's not what he would have meant. In other words, Joel would have been appalled by her caked in blood. And on the one hand, it would have looked like he was judging her. On the other hand, the judging her is judging himself for allowing her to get into that space. That's just what they're doing so masterfully with language. Is usually it's not about what the words seem to imply. So my answer would be, he would be appalled. She'd look at him and give him a little shit, and they move on. But it would be everything. And I'll shut up there. I just had
no, that's a good one, because her response would be, what you taught me. He's like,
Dad, it's what you taught me to do, man.
I learned it by watching you. You're like, oh,
well said. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. So Tom, we're going to go back to your issue, unless you feel we resolved it, the issue of the choice to.
I think we've resolved it.
So this is one of those things I think Walking Dead did really well with the character of Morgan. Because I think I've got the name right. He's the man in season 3, Clear. Yeah. Because he was incapable of shooting his wife. And she ended up they stored her in a cellar, and then his son opened the door, and she got him. And he's been, that's led to the episode Clear, which I think was very close to the best episode of that series. So that whole thing of shoot or not is a whole palette of narrative possibilities, right? It's fantastic. I'm going to use the word fantastic. That doesn't mean I like people shooting. It means that I love the diversity of options.
Yes.
Well, and I love that, because I think that happens in real life, that we hold on to our love for certain people to the degree that it's toxic and it's harmful, and we end up hurting other people through that.
Totally.
And so when we talk about whether or not you would shoot someone, it's almost like, well, is there someone that you need to protect as well? Like, that does, like, if it was like one child was infected and one wasn't, how does my love for one protect the love, or not protect the love that I have for the other? And so in that situation, I love that. And I do think that The Last of Us hasn't quite put anyone in that situation yet. But it does come down to, I think, to answer your question, Tom, too, about like, it's sad no matter what, but your decision is definitely, are you capable of thinking about the other people that you're harming by letting your love control whether or not you pull the trigger? And that's what, Morgan's mistake is that he let his love for his wife put his son in danger. And that is messy, but that's also,
and he didn't consider that until it was the reality.
Right.
Like, I think that's the part that got him, was he never even thought that keeping her around was putting them in danger. And once that happened, he was like, obviously. Like, why did I do that? You know,
But which was the guy who shot his son because he became infected in The Last of Us?
That was Henry. He shot his brother.
Yeah, there you go. Yes.
I mean, so I mean, that's the interesting different element, is that he was so appalled at the action that he thought the only thing to do was to shoot himself. I mean, and rather than seeing that as something that was good for the community.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I think, is a little bit more because not just he was appalled by the action itself, but if you look at the train of events that happened, he betrayed a lot of people in order to keep his brother alive, to get the necessary medicine and procedures that he needed. And by him then getting to the point where he had to kill his brother, he felt his entire existence was pointless, because look at all the stuff that he had done for his brother, and that didn't help ultimately. And I think that was the moment that he killed himself, more so than just, oh, damn it, I had to shoot him. It was the totality of all the things culminating into, I betrayed this leader, this guy that was a good dude, but I needed it because I needed to protect my brother. And here I am, the one that pulled the trigger on my brother. That whole totality was huge. Because I mean, he wouldn't even let Joel do it. Joel was gonna, and he wouldn't let Joel do it. And I think that the sum total of all those things crashed into him at once, and that was too much. And he couldn't deal with that emotionally, and that's why he did it. That was a huge moment. Huge.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. He didn't have the luxury of thinking about it for a while, right? In other words,
I was going to say, I feel like his fight response took over, and his body did what it needed to do, and then the rest of him caught up later, and it was too much.
Yeah. You know? And Joel was trying to chill him out, right?
He was, and I think Joel saw it. Joel's been there, right? Like Joel knows where he's at and tries to stop him. And I think a lot of people in this show have that conundrum of, look at all the things that I've done. And if it's not for something, then, and I think that's where we do that. We stick on a track because if we go anywhere else, it makes everything else we've done up until that point invalid. And that's a fallacy, right? That's not true.
Right.
But we do get stuck in that cognitive distortion a lot.
And I do think that's
we're comparing ourselves.
Well, and yes, and we can't help. I think these kind of shows do a great job of thought experiments on what would you do if you held someone else's life in your hands, right? And all these different situations, large time scales to think about it, short time scales, you have to react, brother, sister, stranger, all those personality, all those different dynamics play out in that straightforward question: would you kill someone, right? And I just think that this show, I think, and I said it before, by focusing on two characters trying to get from point A to point B, they don't get stuck world building like they did in Walking Dead. They don't need that savior character of Rick who's going to keep everybody together. And a lot of that kind of storytelling is hard, where you're going to create a new world. And you know, they've not spent more than one episode on world building in this show for each place, each group that's tried to build a world. And I think that's a more difficult writing challenge than just having two people on the road. And that's why I've enjoyed this.
From a writer's standpoint, the reason why that's so hard is because it's the least bit of writing and more just reflecting of how life works. We don't actively world build. We just live in a world that is built and we're surviving within it.
Well said,
that's
man.
What they're doing.
Well said.
Thank you.
No,
that's literally the way this story works.
So even when we're living our daily lives, people are going to get mad at me if I say we're like ants, but we're doing what we got to do to keep the nest alive. Right. And by doing that, we keep ourselves alive, and we don't even really think about it. We just do our gig. And that's not cynical. That's not
practical. It's obvious, really. Like,
it's those
and I think that's
go ahead, man.
Well, I think, like, and to Leandra's point, one of the things that we don't do well is embrace our inner monsters. We like to think that we're above being bad. And this is a world that says, no, you have to be bad as part of your actual existence. Like those things that we used to 25 years ago, we would have said, you can't do this. Right. Like Joel says, I'm a killer. He doesn't say I'm a murderer. He says, but I'm a killer because, yeah, I understand that in this world that I exist in, killing is a function. I have to do this if I'm going to continue. But it's not murder because I'm not going out with the intent that, I'm going to take you off the board. No, but I am going to survive. And if you are a threat to my survival, you got to go. That's a killer.
But why? I mean, the character played by that lovely actor, Graham Greene. I mean, is that the example of the exception to that rule, Victor? I mean, why?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Why? I mean, one would suppose that there would be individuals who to a much greater degree resisted or eschewed violence. And they were, they seem to be quite different.
Yes, and they would have to have platformed themselves with that allowance. I mean, to not be violent, I would say, is the ultimate privilege in this type of world. And you can only be that if you've cultivated that privilege. Either you directly cultivated it or it was cultivated for you, much in the same way of what Joel seemed to be wanting to build for Ellie. He didn't want her to have to be violent, so he was going to be that. And those people that, basically found a space for being killers for others would have been part of that societal context of, this is why it's not murder. I am a killer so that you don't have to be. And you not being a killer is great because now I have something else that I can live for. I'm not killing for killing's sake. I'm killing to keep you safe. You're giving me purpose with this tenacity. And by way of giving me purpose, you're getting something as well. You're getting survival. You're getting to keep your hands clean. You're getting an uplift of some sort. And we are now in symbiosis working together to create this new society of this wild world. Wild, wild world. I tell you what, this is where I will put a plug in for Alice in Borderland, because the issue you just addressed is the theme of the show, and they do it well.
I have a question about that, because when you were talking, Victor, about like, I'm a killer, not a murderer. What about when he tortures those two people and then kills them after they give him, like, is that murder? Like, where's the line? Or was that a mercy? I don't think that was a mercy killing, because he was
definitely not mercy. No, definitely not mercy. But it's practical. And the reason why it's practical is, in this sense of killers, I have assaulted you. It is only right in my expectation that you will at some point try to assault me back. And the only way that I can keep that from happening is to kill you. This is kind of interesting. As a young Black teen in the 90s, this was the preeminent idea of how gang culture worked. There was no sense of right or wrong. It's, you did this to me, therefore I'm going to do this to you. It doesn't matter that, well, my cousin did that to your guy, and that's why you did this to me. And there was never a point of origin that was ever addressed. It was literally just a system of tit for tat. And that's literally how gangbang culture has survived, if that's the term, as this escalating assault system of tit for tat. No rhyme or reason is considered. And at no point is someone stepping in going, well, if it's tit for tat, we're done. Stop. Like, right now, you stop. That's not the way that it works. And so that's such a very natural, I think, system of thinking. I think that's the way it works in the animal kingdom, where you get to a certain point, you've entered my territory. It doesn't matter that you did it on accident. It doesn't matter that you were just walking around. You entered my territory. In order for me to protect it, I'm going to kill you. Now, if you have the right resources, right? Maybe I kill you, but there's 2-3 other ones that I wasn't aware of. Well, now they're going to come get me, and they're like, now this is our territory, because that is this natural system of practical killing. And I think that's the thing. When we start putting the moralistics into it, that's where it changes. But practically, if I'm trying to get my kid back, and we'll say, colloquially, that Ellie is his kid. If I hurt you in order to get my kid back, but I don't kill you, you could always come back after me. And I know that, because that's the system of the world we live in. So rather than risk that, I'm gonna take my enemy list down one more, and then one more, and then one more.
Yeah.
I accept
that. Just be straight up revenge. Straight up pissed him off.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Joel is death. Right.
Yes.
But not just death in the name of sustaining whatever love he has at that moment.
Yes.
And an increasingly wimpy death.
Oh,
You're hostile, dude.
I mean,
you are just so hostile.
I mean, listen, I mean, the dude that threatens to pop a kneecap off with a knife, that is a level that you know, anything less than that is kind of.
He's, before we know, he's going to be planting flowers and
of course he is.
He's gonna get his sheep. He's gonna get his sheep.
What's wrong with
his sheep?
Singing Kumbaya.
Yeah, he's gonna take care of his sheep, man. Look at dreams, Tom.
See, you spend an hour with a Man U fan and it just all falls apart. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, not the hooligan mentality. That's terrible.
Oh my
it's
gosh.
terrible. Stop
all
it.
Right.
Stop it. That's
anything else you guys want to say about the Elli-sodes?
They were great.
We gotta give Storm props.
Oh,
she came in, she rocked an episode. She did what she needed. I mean, I didn't really care about Riley when playing the game, but now I kind of wish we had more like that. I have to put it out there.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've said it a lot and I'll say it again. The writing is creating a space for actors to just be actors and not politicians. Right? They're not being preachers. They're not telling you how to live your life. They're just giving us the diversity of the human condition in a very high stakes situation. And it's almost as if we don't hear the writers. The only time I heard the writers was the mall episode when you knew it was going to end that way. Then I knew that there was writing going on. But 90% of the time, it's just people being. And that's hard. That's just really hard to do, particularly in these kind of shows.
Absolutely.
Anyone else go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, normally we do like the video game summary.
Oh yes, let's do the video game summary. Please.
I will say
so what we do is Leandra's been telling us that she's been playing the game up to the point in the episode.
Oh, that's awesome.
So she's gonna tell us what she's done, and I'll tell you about my basement.
Look, so here's the thing. So you have to, so the first episode is the DLC, right? And so I went and like played the DLC, and it is like not as fun as the rest of the game. I think you're playing Ellie, you feel like less prepared, you don't really have ammo, like, so there's a little bit of sense of like you're not gonna like take on too much because you're not given a gun or anything. It's just kind of you, but like there's also, she like takes down like a whole squadron of people in the mall while she's trying to like, because like in what they did, let me back up. What they did in the game really well that I kind of wish it played out in the show was that she originally takes Joel to a mall and secures him there first. So she's in a mall with Riley and also going through a mall trying
the juxtaposition.
So it's like, and as someone who grew up in the 90s when malls were like the thing, and it was like where we went every weekend, you know, that was like the thing, go cruising around the mall, it was like really cool. And it was the first time in the game that you use the clickers and the mushroom people against your enemy. And so you would like set things up and like send them after your enemy, like the soldiers. So it was really, really cool. So I loved that. But it was just like, it was basically just playing a story, which is, I like to shoot things, which thankfully, getting through the resort is like the whole time I was watching it, and I'm like, I can't believe she gets to just like go straight there. It's kind of like with the like sniper scene where I was like, how come Joel just gets to just like walk up? Meanwhile, I have to spend 2 hours trying to figure out. It was actually really, really good. And all the changes that they made, I'm really down with because it cuts down on the time. And like, we don't really want to, you know, the only thing I will say is that we haven't seen a lot of the clickers and the runners and like the mushroom people in these 2 episodes, other than randomly when they're needed. And so I think it would be nice in the show, like you do in the video game, to randomly come upon them so that you are reminded of that danger, because it definitely keeps it very real when playing this part of it. But let me tell you, the show was like, what, 2 hours between these 2 episodes? That's like 6 hours of my life.
Wow.
Like,
wow.
It would be 20 of my life, starting over, not knowing. Oh, every time I turn the damn thing on, I can hear Brad Pitt in a basement, right? Just, you know, I'm gonna cheat again here, and I'm actually gonna go back to the sociopath episode, because it wasn't just him that was being, in a sense, judged. It was that whole community, right? Because it's, you know, you get the person and it's not like all human groups are like this, because obviously Joel's brother's group isn't like this, right? So there's a diversity, but if you get that right ratio of sociopathic, charismatic leader, people who are willing to follow, and then a few henchmen that'll cut people up in the back.
Are you talking about Liverpool?
Sort of.
So here's the thing, though. I will say
that came out of nowhere.
I know, and I'm gonna keep going. And
all I can say, brother, is 7-0, man. 7-0. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Go ahead, Leandra. I had to fire back.
No, you're good. Tom, you are great. I love that you just bring it in. So in the video game, though, you basically do kill everyone. And but the thing is, in the video game, there's no women and children. And so it's just a bunch of, well, I mean, I'm assuming that there are somewhere, I guess, but like you basically kill everyone in the entire encampment. And so that was my question from the show that I didn't bring up, was that like where, like when this thing catches on fire, you know, in the video game, you're running through the snow, you're basically just trying to outrun everyone, you're shooting people as you go. Where was this woman and her daughter and all these other people that you see? Or were they basically like, you know what, this man is not okay, and we're gonna let this happen, and we're coming after it's all done and said, and we're just gonna stay up here in our building and watch from afar? Like where were those people?
Well, I mean, I think that's a very sincere question, especially on the basis that they said that they had been hungry or needing rations for like, you know, a while. Elli on her own finds a deer, shoots it, like literally like she's only out there for like a little while. And so there's this level that you have to go, were y'all actively not taking care of people? Is that literally what the situation was? Because as you guys go out there and they finally decide that they're going to go out and hunt, and they come upon this deer that Elli's already shot, but like, how hard would it have been for y'all to actually go out and find some deer? Because she just did it. She literally just went out and was like, you know what? We need some food. I got this last little ration piece. I put this piece for Joel. I'm going to go out and I'm going to go hunt. And she finds a deer like right away. What were y'all doing? There's a whole group of y'all. What are y'all doing?
They were eating each other.
And you almost get the feeling like that was what they wanted. You know, because
why you didn't have to go out into the cold?
Just right there. You know what else would do that is if instead of going to hunt a deer, you go and find a couple of them, right? You capture them and you bring them over to the resort and they breed, and then you raise them for that purpose. So that way you go, hey, look, now we've got long-term food. We've got it for a while now. Like, this will work.
David's got it. He's got a whole crew of people breeding.
Like, that's what I'm saying. But instead, no, y'all want to lend people's ears. And
well, that raises the moral question: what's wrong with eating people?
It's bad for you, isn't it? Isn't that we see that in if you do it for too long, you get the shakes, and you know.
Well, is that worse than starvation?
Maybe?
I don't see. Okay, so one answer is we answer that question with a binary. The other option is that it's messy, and I'm on team messy, right?
Messy,
I mean, definitely messy.
Messy team Ronaldo.
Dude, I guarantee you're going to have a certain percentage of the population is going to eat you.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that judgy. I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. I'm going to say,
I don't think it's right or wrong. I think it's, I think what we do, like, right, you know, like if you want to eat sentient beings or whatever, I don't necessarily, I do kind of see David like hiding it from people, because it's almost like they would make this choice, but it's better for them if they don't know.
Right.
I'm one of those people who would be like, I just don't want to know.
Just don't tell me.
Yes.
Just don't tell me.
Yes. This group is functioning like a very healthy Freudian mind. In other words, he is suppressing all the things that they don't want to think.
Right.
He's the one that's taking care of the energy in the back in ways that they don't want to think about. They're not asking questions, just like most of us floating through the day, trying to get what we want or what we think we want. And healthy was, poetic, not
I was gonna say, but they're still
medical.
scared of him.
But the question,
very scared of him. So there's something else he's doing. But in this situation,
yeah.
And the question that I immediately have is, when they first talked about the rations that they had left, was that accounting for the bodies that they had? where the people are specifically the rations. Like, are they killing people to eat them? Or if you happen to die, this is what's going to happen to you. Like, because that's how it was presented to us initially. When the girl's dad is killed, we have this understanding like, okay, well, waste not, want not. Like, dude is gone, but he can still help. Like, that's one thing, but it's something totally different if you're at, Sunday mass and you're like, Charles back there is looking a little thick. Man. You might have to shave off a little bit of old Chucky butt back there. You get a little Chuck roast. You know what I'm talking about? Like, let's do that. Like, that could I'm sorry, Leandra. So sorry. I'm just saying, like, that could be a little ground Chuck go a long way. That's all I'm saying.
I'm just laughing because I'm the chunky butt in the back at church.
I need you to sit up in the front.
I tell you what, man.
I'm gonna be sitting in church and I'm gonna be like, is that preacher up there looking at me? Look at his lips.
Not if he's a good sociopath.
Like,
you have no clue it's coming. I tell you what, when I was in 7th grade, in my English class, I found this book of short stories, Tales of Adventure, or something like that. And in the book, I read Shirley Jackson's The Lottery. And the story is everybody comes to the town square, they take their things. I'm not going to ruin the end for the audience, but read it. And it was my first introduction to, oh, shit. Oh my God, how can it be possible that they celebrate this? And then you just go watch Midsummer. And you'll get a taste for how people
Island, all kinds of things like that.
Absolutely. Man, that was hard to read in 7th grade. What is this?
But good on you for taking it on. Good job.
Oh, I love that stuff, man. Like, we're all fringe people here looking for the difference, right? Just living our life looking for the difference. Any final comments on the Elli-sodes?
I apologize to any chefs out there that took offense to my ground chuck comment. I'm so sorry.
Or anybody named Chuck, please.
Anybody named Chuck that's listening, I apologize.
All right. Well, Victor, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you on social media?
Of course, you guys can find me at Vantage In-House on all forms of social media. And also check out my comic making imprint, You Create Comics. You create the letter U, CRE, the number 8, comics.com. We have all kinds of amazing projects and pieces for you to tell amazing stories of your very own, like The Last of Us.
That's fantastic. Leandra, do you have a spider coming down from your ceiling or a leak, or you were looking up at your ceiling? She's not going to tell us.
There's some like weird noises, and I'm supposed to be alone in this building. So
all right, let's wrap this up. Right, it's a clicker. She ain't taking it, Victor. How about you, Tom? Where can people find you on social media?
People can email me at aka.tombuller@gmail.com.
Fantastic. How about you, Leandra?
You can find me on Twitter at Parris Leandra, at Parris Leandra.
Awesome. You can find all episodes of Surviving The Last of Us on YouTube at Dark Loops Productions. You can also just type it into the Google machine, and podcast versions will be available as well. If you'd like to leave comments about this episode, this conversation, leave them on this YouTube page or send an email to darkloopsproductions@gmail.com, and we'll be sure to read it at the end of our next episode. Tom, Victor, thank you so much for joining us. Great conversation. And for those of you out there who may think I was a little hard on Tom, number one, he's a Man U fan, so he's born into it. And two, believe me, we have much worse arguments every week at my home. So love you, Tom. Thank you so much for being here. And as always, love you too, Victor.
Thank you. So
there it is. From all of us to all of you, big hugs. And remember, I got you, baby girl.
Bye-bye.